Hello, Wake Up New Zealand, Karasaki speaking. Well, I don't know how many of you might have heard about Vision 2040. That's leading up to 2040, and it's going to be enacted out very quickly. So this is about the entrenchment of the UNDRIP into New Zealand, United Nations Declaration of Indigenous Peoples' Rights. So I want to go back to 2007, a speech in Parliament by Horemaya, he was the Minister of Maori Affairs. And he was quite blatant, and he told the Maori Party to get their head out the sand and stop their hollow talk, because they had been supporting, they wanted this signed, the Labour Party were against it, everyone was against it but the Maori Party. So what Horemaya said, he said the declaration adopted does neither, is very disappointing. He said that the Maori Party would try to adopt the UNDRIP. He wasn't happy about that. And he spoke about the four provisions in the UNDRIP, which are problems to New Zealand. He said it was incompatible with New Zealand's constitutional and legal arrangements and the established treaty settlement policy. Under Article 26 of the UNDRIP, it states that Indigenous people have the right to lands, territories, resources they have traditionally owned, occupied, or otherwise used or acquired. That's very broad. For New Zealand, this covers potentially the entire country. So he said it doesn't appear to recognise that lands in New Zealand have been purchased by Maori and non-Maori, and they are freehold lands that are owned by different cultures. And this doesn't recognise this. So it doesn't recognise both Indigenous and non-Indigenous. This ignores contemporary reality and would be impossible to implement, he said. So he went on, he said the declaration also implies that Indigenous people would have the right of veto over parliamentary lawmaking, and that government strongly supports the full and active engagement of Indigenous people in democratic decision-making processes, but these articles imply different classes of citizenship, where Indigenous have rights not held by others. They have more rights than others. He said Indigenous rights in New Zealand are of profound importance, but he did not see that as one should be more important than the other. And he said the Treaty of Waitangi, being a founding document, has a parallel system for redress. So it redresses Maori claims, etc. He said nearly 40% of New Zealand's fishing quota is owned by Maori, and claims to be over half the country's land area has been settled. So he's talking about the treaty here and what it's done. He said we also have some of the most extensive consultation mechanisms in the world, where the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi, including the principle of informed consent, are enshrined in the resource management law. So the Labour-led government was focused in pursuing goals which achieve real results for people, he said. How it's changed. It's about time the Maori Party got its head out of the sand, out of the clouds, and focused on achieving real milestones, he said, rather than pie in the sky. So he noted that, the Maori Party were the only ones pushing that. But since then, in 2007, John Keyes aligned himself with the Maori Party and secretly sent Peter Sharples over to the UN to actually sign the UNDRIP, and people in New Zealand didn't get to find that out until actually he was over there the day it was to be signed. So now I was reading the UN news letter, and I see that the Green Party, Eugenie Sage, wants the UNDRIP introduced into a constitution of New Zealand. Now, we've got Nania Mahuta in the last week has had a 3-day workshop on Indigenous constitution with overseas speakers. That was held at the Auckland University. So there's this big push. Hair Purpura is just a tool in the toolbox of UNDRIP. So this is all about Vision 2040, the meetings between Jacinda Ardern, Mahuta, Willie Jackson, and the iwi Chairs Forum. So the removal of the Resource Management Act is going to go ahead next year, the replacement of it. So this will be replaced with 3 new legislations to accommodate the entrenching of the UNDRIP into New Zealand's economy, the infrastructure, education, health, farming, etc., etc., etc. And it will hasten. So Ardern is not looking very stable in government. The people are not happy with her. I can see that she's going to do many things in haste now to make these things happen. So plus the 29 legislations that have just 9 a.m. to midnight meetings in Parliament at the end of last week as to pass 29 legislations, including 4, 5, 6, 7 waters, and hate speech, voting for 16-year-olds, majors that should be out there discussed in public before any of this happened. It should never have been pushed hastily through this legislative positions. The legislative parliament, since Ardern's been in government, we've seen one bill, one law amended, bills. It's been a domino effect, and it's gone every week. It's gone on and on and on. It's never ending, introducing a bills and acts being amended. So what Harimara said, that UNDRIP stands for self-determination and Indigenous peoples. This will never truly happen, as New Zealand is the UN outpost and the WEF of the world. So it's definitely going to happen if Ardern stays in government. I see Simon O'Connor is dead against co-governance. So co-governance is about iwi having veto rights. And it's exactly what Harimaya has said. He has said that it will alter everything in New Zealand. It will be Indigenous, and people need to see, the changing of language. Indigenous can mean many things. You can be born elsewhere and still be Indigenous to this country, the place you're born in. This is it. So people look at the Latin meaning of Indigenous, indigeni, and see what that means, because, as I said, language has been changed, stories have been retold, etc., etc., etc. So wake up, New Zealand. This is a plan. Vision 2040. And it's not going to happen in 2040. they're working their way up hastily to make it happen ASAP. And the New Zealand government have just signed paperwork with Canada to do with Indigenous too. So it's all go, go, go. And if you looked in the UN, you would see it's all about Indigenous climate change, Indigenous COVID, Indigenous this, Indigenous economies, and Indigenous are leaders, Ardern has said in the UN virtual meeting just recently. Wake up, New Zealand. Apartheid in New Zealand, and this is what it's leading to. Wake up.